Hello, my name is Atticus Gonzalez, and this is the draft for my final project. Final draft for Atticus Gonzalez. So first, a quick description of my program. So my program is a baseball statistics tracker where the user is able to input stats for a specific player. Then the program then lists that stats into a table and then calculates the team average, home runs, and RBIs. The stats that I've included are name, position, at-bats, hits, home runs, RBIs, batting average in games. Batting average is not a statistic that is inputted from the user, but instead is calculated by dividing the number of hits by at-bats. So first, let's take a look at my dialog box. So as you can see, this is one example of my dialog box. A dialog box is something that pops up where the user is then able to input a certain amount of text. So we see this right here in this code, right here. This is directly from my program. We see that there are multiple different steps that I needed to implement in order to get this dialog box. First, we have the add player clicked function, and this uses the queue input dialog code and which is then asks the user for the input. The queue input dialog get text creates a pop-up window which takes a string as an input. You will see later when I use one using an integer instead. The statement this refers back to the main window. The statement player name is the label that appears inside the dialog box. The statement add player is the title of the dialog box. Q line edit normal is something that I had to add to make sure that it inputs normal text instead of something such as the password. And OK allows Qt to know when OK or cancel is clicked. So next we're going to look when adding an input field. Adding an input field is very similar to adding the dialog box. The only difference is instead of saying Q input get text as we did in the last one, here we put Q input get int. This opens a dialog box which then has an input being an integer. The at-bats, as you can see right here, I have a whole bunch of them, but let's first take a look at the int games. So the statement at-bats, games, hits, or home runs is the label which tells the user what the number is used for. The 00 establishes the default value as 0 and the minimum number of runs allowed as well. Finally, this add player, just like before, is the title of the dialog box window. So now let's take a look at when we had to add a player. Adding a label, sorry about that. Adding a label, we've already seen it throughout my code. We can see it through many different aspects, but we'll just take a look when I use it during my dialog box. You can see right here that there are multiple labels such as player name and position. This gives the user to know what they're writing for. We also see this during the input field as well. Now let's take a look at how I added a message box. So as you can see right here, we use, this is at the end of my function, and we add this function called queue message information, but then certain things inside, which I'll go over in a second. This creates and starts the pop-up message, and as you can see right here, player.1% was successfully added is the words that's going to be inputted within the message box. The player added is the title. This Q string is what I just discussed, but this bit at the end, our name, takes the argument name from the function already established, so it ensures that the player's name from previous is inputted there. That way I don't have to just say the player was added. I can make it specific by saying the player Atticus was added or the player John was added. And finally, let's take a look at how I added a button. The button was by far the easiest part, and I was even able to do this in week 1 of my program. I added the button in the .ui by simply just naming it button add player. However, the difficult part was, as you can see right here, when I connected the UI button add player to the function on add player clicked. I did this right here. When the Q push button is clicked, this refers back to the main window, and then within the same main window, it calls this on player clicked. I'll show you in a minute what that function does. So now let's take a look at my code in itself. So as you can see right here, this is the the UI that I did where I added certain buttons and certain labels. Now let's take a look. During the main.cpp, I mainly just, wait, not the main. Sorry about that. During the main window.h, I mainly simply just added to update the team stats and update the player table. But the main thing I did here was establish this struct. This struct is a variable which I'm able to name what goes into the struct, which has all of the variables which I discussed. These variables are the statistics that will later be inputted. And now this is where the vast majority of my code goes into. We can see, as I discussed earlier, the on player clicked. This was connected to my button add player, and all this code occurs after the button is clicked. Here's my code. And then down here, this is how we take the statistics and the numbers from the players from up here, and we set them to a value within the table. Here's the rest of my code, which this is the final part right here, which is not within my presentation, but all this part does right here is it takes the numbers already calculated and calculates them for the team overall statistics. So now let's take a look at how it looks like when I run it. Oops, I guess I didn't save something. All right, so here's my GUI. And it's looking, I'm gonna go here. We don't need to go to the main screen actually. Sorry about that. But here, as you can see, the team current batting stats are 0, 0, and 0 RBIs because I've inputted nothing. Now, when we look over here, I'm gonna add the player. And as you can see both the label, you can see the dialog box, and you can see the button down here as well. I'm just gonna type A since I don't have both hands. I'm just gonna type C, and here is the input box as well for numbers. As you can see right here, there is a difference between them. And then now we'll take a look at the message box. And here's the message box. Player A was successfully added. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.